This is Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu, the head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. Thank you for listening. I have pinned at the top of the screen, if you are joining us on Clubhouse, the link to our YouTube channel where I've now currently uploaded all of the reviews that I had been slacking on. They're all available for you now on the It's Complicated YouTube channel. If you want to stay abreast of what we have going on, please click the green house above our heads. And let's begin on books that came out on January, was it 5th, 2022? Wow, we're in the future, dude.
Yup. Hey, this is the year of Soylent Green.
Oh, that sounds delicious. Anyway, we've got a bunch of comics that came out on January 5th. Where would we like to begin, Stanford?
You know, let's start with Batman comics. I mean DC comics.
They are detective comics, taking waka waka waka.
Oh yeah. Okay, so there are two books that I focused on. One was not a Batman book, and the other was a Batman book.
Was it? I see what you mean. I see what you did there. Okay.
So the Batman book that I picked for this week is Superman, Son of Kal-El.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it a Batman book? Well, Batman's in it, Robin's in it, and they get some of the best lines, and they're like all over it. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, when I purchased the book, I was thinking, okay, 2 Superman books. Let's get away from Batman.
Surprise!
He stalked me.
He's Batman.
And I'm not saying that Batman's a terrible character. I'm not saying that all the characters are bad. It's just this feel, and I've been commenting on it for a while, that DC Comics can't seem to go a week without giving us more Batman than anyone else, and it's unfortunate because they've got the deepest bench of comic book characters of all the comic book companies.
Who else is giving us Batman?
Yes. But Superman, aside from Batman being all over it, Superman, Son of Kal-El, I feel like for better and for worse that this was just in some ways this was sort of a run of the mill Superman, Son of Kal-El episode.
True.
It didn't stick out for me, and it's still a good book, right? I mean, I've been very open about my enjoying this take on Superman, that you actually have the son of Superman, and he's his own character, but he's not struggling with being the son of Superman, which is nice to see.
True.
It just shows some real. It shows that the writer is trying to think outside of the usual tropes that come into play when you do the son of a superhero, right?
Yes.
In this one, Damian Wayne shows up, and he is, and he's also noting that John Kent is bisexual, and it's just kind of like this. It's a weird appearance, and it's made weirder by my having read an article where some people thought that they had switched out the Robins. You could probably talk more to that.
I can talk about that. Yeah.
Yes. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, here's the thing. Okay. First of all, they did make it fairly clear this was supposed to be Damian Wayne because he was grinning, and that was uncomfortable for a lot of people because the idea of Damian Wayne and happiness and expressions of joy is creepy.
Right.
Because normally he only does that when people are suffering horribly. There's that. There's also the fact that Damian Wayne is technically somewhat of a wanted criminal because he imprisoned and tortured a whole bunch of people. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, they were supervillains and they were bad people and they had done horrible things. But, they still have, rights or under habeas corpus and whatnot. And he was not paying any attention to due process in that regard. And he was like, no, I'm going to capture them, I'm going to torture them, and I'm going to do it, and nobody's going to stop me because I'm Damian Wayne. Who's going to stop me? And his father hasn't stopped him, or complained about it even, which is ironic here. So all those things are in fairly recent canon continuity and are gleefully brushed aside to have their kind of squee reaction at Jonathan Kent's superpower boyfriend. I get it, and that's fine. That's totally cool. It's great to normalize this sort of experience, and I'm totally in favor of it. What I am not in favor of is the kind of swishing past the or not really paying attention to the true challenges with certain characters, be they Damian Wayne, Wally West, or Wanda Maximoff. That these people have done horrible crimes to actual people who actually have suffered really badly, and that's never paid. Nobody pays any attention to it. Nobody cares. So, from a continuity standpoint, that's a beef with me. That would be a concern with this Robin. But here, we get to see John. He's trying to be Superman. He's trying to figure out what he's doing. He's trying to learn on the job. He's had some great moments in past issues. This issue, as you say, he didn't really get to shine. He wasn't the star of this book. And not being the star of your own book, for me, is a bit of a pet peeve.
Yeah, I can, sometimes it's not a pet peeve for me, but sometimes you can feel it, and I was starting to feel it in this book.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's interesting when someone is not the star in their own book because it allows you to get a better sense of their world. It allows you to get a better sense of some other character that plays an important part, or it can serve as a jumping off point from a character in this world to another world. I get all of that, right? And sometimes it works. But in this one, I felt like it just flattened out the story.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah.
I'll say as far as what I would say about this book, it wasn't a terrible experience. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was bad, but it wasn't up to the level of some of the previous Superman Son of Kal-El books.
Yes, it's been much stronger. I agree. So for
So
me, this would be I would rate Superman Son of Kal-El a high, but yet a meh nonetheless. This is issue number 6. Tom Taylor's a great writer. He's got a lot of great things going on. He's got a lot of great ideas and a lot of tools in his tool belt that he can use well. I just think, as you said, he got hit with a bat. So
yep.
You like that one? You like what I did there?
Yeah, that seems to be happening to a lot of folks in the DCU right now.
Indeed, indeed. This is Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu, head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. What's up next, Stanford?
Let's do the Superman book that didn't have Superman in it. That would be World of Krypton.
Indeed. Featuring Kal-El, which is super on the nose, I thought.
Well, I mean, yeah. A lot of this book is super on the nose. I think it's weird. I mean, we're seeing the world of Krypton, and I actually like the idea of seeing the world of Krypton. I like the story they're telling. The art is the art. I like the art, but I'm not sure if it's the right style for World of Krypton.
Okay.
It's a very bright cartoony style.
Yes.
I just wondered if there wasn't another direction they could have gone. The storytelling in the art is great. The art is great art, but there are moments when I just don't feel like it quite captures the world, right? As far as the story is concerned, it's nice. I actually think it's nice to see a story about Jor-El where he's clearly got feet of clay, and they're really showing some of these other characters around him that I don't think that we've seen a lot of. We're witnessing the rise of General Zod, but we're witnessing it in the context of General Zod passing judgment on somebody who tries to murder Jor-El, right? So it's very clear that Jor-El and Zod are friends. We've got Jor-El's brother, who's very much a part of the story. We've got his older brother, Kal-El, Kal-El's not older. He's younger as well, but he's older than the other brother. So it's interesting to see it, but one thing that is kind of weird about it, even as I talk about it, is this is very much about the men of Krypton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the women of Krypton are kind of not present. I mean, Laura shows up in a couple panels just to say a few nice words to Jor-El and pat him on the head. Supergirl as a baby, so she's just in swaddling cloth.
Yep.
So I thought that was one thing that was a little bit jarring to me. Um, it's not a terrible story. Again, I feel like I still feel like I wanted a little more from this book, right? I'm glad I picked it up. I'm glad I read it. I like the story I'm absorbing, but it's not quite coming together for me.
Well, for me, a lot of things you said hit home as well. The artist here is Michael Avon Waming, and you get Michael Avon Waming when you're like, this book has to be on time. We can't screw around, because if there's one thing he's going to do, he's going to get the book done. He's an amazing storyteller, and he's a fast storyteller. So if you get him on the book, you're like, oh, this book, they wasn't screwing around with schedule on this book. They serious. Because he's also not cheap. He's not cheap at all.
Okay.
He is, however, a stylist. He does have a very specific style that his stuff is going to look like no matter what you ask him to do. And if you're not up for that style, then that's going to be a challenge. Is his style the right one for a doomed planet? I don't know. I can't say that. But I can see where you would have that concern tonally with this work. My second thing that I wanted to note was World of Krypton doesn't actually give you a look at the world of Krypton. It gives you a look at a couple of families on Krypton. I don't know what kind of music they're listening to. I don't know what kind of, what's the interesting new entertainment thing that everybody's talking about? I don't know, because we don't get a glimpse of their society. We don't get a glimpse of their culture. We get a glimpse of the L family. In the same way that the Skywalkers dominated Star Wars, we get a glimpse of one family and what's happening there. Which brings me to, as I noted, Cruel, which seems like, the way that they said, for Megatron, well, if you're a gun, you kind of have to turn into a supervillain, don't you? If your name is Cruel and you're speaking a language that has the word cruel in it, which apparently they do, it seems kind of an odd predestination for this middle child to have taken on, as you note, and that's a little too on the head for me. That's a little, even for comic books, even for a Silver Age vibed comic book, that's a little too on the nose for me. So that was a concern therein. And likewise, this is probably a few years before the destruction of Krypton. This is a society that's hurtling towards doom and not paying attention to it. There are some enormous parallels there that you could very easily draw that are not being done in service to this whole, what can I do? If only they would listen. This kind of litany that Jor-El has been doing in our collective fictional understanding forever. What does Jor-El like sports? Does he have a video game addiction? I mean, what else can we learn about this character to flesh him out and make him a thing? Because right now we're playing the hits, and I get that you play the hits. But it's not really striking a chord with me. This is a Wikipedia entry, not a comic book.
Well, I think that the only character that you're actually starting to get to know is Zod.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to show Zod as somebody as a warrior who's tired of war.
Yeah.
And that I find really interesting. And I like how they're playing with him as a character who he's tired of war, but he's struggling to find his place outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, I got to say that's the one thing that they've added. But you raise a really important point. Jor-El has been around for a long time, and we don't know what his favorite sport is.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a long time to go without any character development.
And we know even less about his wife.
Yeah. I mean, she's literally just sort of the mother on an altar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I also keep thinking about the television show that they did on the World of Krypton as well, right?
Yes.
And
which
I was
did
thinking to
cover a lot
myself-
of the things I'm concerned about.
Well, yeah, I mean, and what I think is interesting is when I came to this book, I was expecting more of that. And I think you're right. Like the television show, it wasn't great.
I liked it. I thought it was
but
great.
I felt like I felt like it was like the way in which they put together that world. Everything was really hit or miss for me. And there's some elements that didn't make any sense that they were drawing on as far as the storytelling. But I was still there every week. But I got to give them points. They tried, even when they didn't do it well. They tried, and more often than not, they did do it well. So yeah. I mean, I'm gonna have to. I hate to do this, but I'm gonna have to give World of Krypton a meh.
I would stand with you there, and I unfortunately have to share the same thing because I you can't call a book world of something if you only give me a very narrow window into it. That's not a world. That's a very limited perspective.
Right. So yeah. So I
Not
read a
looking
lot of
great so
Marvel.
far.
I read
This
a lot of Marvel this week.
comic books this week. Let's dig into Marvel with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and Hannibal Tabu. What do we got?
Well, I mean, it was tough. I've continued with my streak of trying to keep up with Amazing Spider-Man every week,
Oh, Stanford.
and you know what? It's been a masochistic endeavor. Um, I feel like there is a story here. I think the art has been really good, um, but I don't feel like, and I think this is one of the biggest issues I have with it. I don't feel like I'm getting enough story, enough interesting stuff to justify reading this weekly.
Yes.
I'm not saying that the stories are bad, but when you go into doing a weekly book, you really got to give me something,
Yes.
and I'm waiting for that something. We haven't really moved beyond. Ben Riley is trying to figure out how to be Spider-Man as part of a corporate entity that has basically stolen a whole bunch of or acquired a whole bunch of Spider-Man as far as the IP side of things. So like he's kind of trying to be the nice guy in a bad situation. That's kind of my take on the character. But he's not doing anything to step out of Peter Parker's shadow.
True.
So I feel like we're literally just watching someone go along to get along, and that's not what I want to see weekly out of a superhero story.
I guess you wouldn't say that's amazing, but yeah, Ben Riley has not distinguished himself as a hero, and moreover, as you say, there is a story here. The Beyond Corporation is doing something wrong, something really, really wrong, and there's a shadow power behind it. That gets maybe 1% of each issue, uh,
Yeah.
while all kind of other frippery happens. Um, that's not accomplishing anything, especially with somebody as drab and milk toast as Ben Riley, who is just not he's not connecting with his knockoff Mary Jane. I'm sorry, his knockoff ex-con Mary Jane. Um, there's this is going somewhere, and you're not very interested in where it goes because wherever it goes, you already know what it is. Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and the
Right.
Beyond Corporation will no longer control the name. That's going to happen. Those are inevitable conclusions to based on what we've seen right now. Getting there should be interesting, and it's not. This is a strongest of mess for me because it just keeps treading water. And that's not to say that the art's not great. That's not to say that everybody's not showing up and trying to do the best book they can. But they have a foundation of at best sand and possibly something more fluid than that.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, yeah, you're right. You're dead right on all of it. I mean, I have to give Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, a meh. Even though this issue did do something interesting as far as bringing in Doctor Octopus, I feel like the more recent portrayals of Doctor Octopus are much more interesting than the original portrayals. Um, you know, I I I thought that he could breed a little something, but all that he really did was show up at the Beyond Corporation and steal some information, and we don't quite yet know what the implications of that information theft is.
Yeah, well, he would say steal back because
Right.
most of what the Beyond Corporation is building up is based on what he did when he ran Parker Industries as Peter Parker. He was
Exactly.
just, as always, short-sighted and sloppy. It's an unfortunate side effect of the arms or something. I don't know. You flail
That's
around.
true, but it's yeah. I mean, I just felt like they didn't. Well, I felt like they really couldn't do a lot with Doctor Octopus, given what they already have going on.
True.
And again, it's like they didn't give me enough to be sending me to this world every week.
Yeah, yeah. This is going to be a meh for me as well.
Yeah. What do you think of Black Widow 13?
Black Widow 13 has a couple of core problems. First of all, this issue in particular was one long fight without any rationale. The Black Widow walks in getting punched in the face, and she leaves avoiding getting punched in the face without really dealing with, which is meant to kind of establish the threat of this. I think it's called the Living Blade character or whatever. But okay, I mean, he doesn't say anything. I think he has one line in the whole book. So you don't really get anything from him as a character to really vibe on him. That was a concern for me. Again, from an execution standpoint, the art team turns in a gorgeous book that really convinces me that this fight happened all over the place, and he was taking her to the mat, and it was not easy for her in any way, despite the fact that he's literally just a guy with a sword.
I had some mixed feelings about the art, but it's also tied into something that I saw in several books this week.
Okay. What's that?
It's using nostalgic art, nostalgic
Yes.
design, right? So what they did was, like, one of the things they do is they kind of pixelate the colors and to make it look like literally make it look like you're reading an old weathered comic, right?
Yes, sir.
And we actually see this in a couple of other books as well. Like, we see this in the Elektra book. I'm not sure it entirely works for me. On one hand, it evokes the past, right?
Yeah.
But there are moments when I see some of the pixelated color choices, and I think to myself, I'm so glad that they've moved beyond that. I felt like it wasn't bad. I felt like in some cases, in some moments, it was a distraction.
Well, I'm looking up what did in the new Matrix movie. The new Morpheus character said, "Nothing comforts anxiety like a little nostalgia," and this, a lot of comic stuff, especially given the demographic that they're selling to, plays very heavily into that. And I totally see your concern there. Here specifically, it was supposed to be a period piece because it was, oh, this isn't happening now. This is happening some years ago when she fought the Living Blade. But oh no, he's back, and here's why he's important. Let's do this flashback.
Right.
So sure, go nostalgia if that's what you need to do for that. But from an overarching story standpoint, Natasha's drive, Natasha's what is she looking for, is not being resolved because Natasha's
Right.
given up this perfect family that she was conditioned to believe that she had created, and then was hidden away from her. And she's desperate to be with them, but she knows that it's the worst possible thing for her to be with them because everybody will murder them because they're squishy and completely non-tactical. That unrequited yearning that she's feeling and that she's going through in this book is a major deficit in terms of storytelling because giving it to her would make her not get what she wants, and not giving it to her would not give her what she wants. So she's in this kind of weird limbo, and that's not entertaining to read.
Well, I mean, or another way of putting it is sometimes when the past is uninteresting, maybe you leave it in the past and you don't try and bring it into the present.
True, that checks out.
And that was the other thing. I felt like this, like what they were trying to do with this issue, it could have been accomplished so many other ways without taking up an entire book.
Yeah, true, totally true. But that was the choice, so that will be a meh for me.
Same here.
Yeah. This is Comic Books This Week, and we're mehing our way through the new year. What do we got next?
Captain Marvel 35.
Captain Marvel 35 versus Vox somebody. Vox, what was the character's name? Vox something?
Okay. Here's the thing. There's actually a lot about this book that I liked. I mean, I kind of like that they're like kind of taking on like all these gajillion attempts to like, well, let me start over again.
Please.
If you look at Captain Marvel, the Captain Marvel that we started off with in the Marvel universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like they had him around. He was dope. He was popular, and then
Everybody
they
loved him.
killed him.
Yep.
Right? It's one. But I think what's interesting is one of the few instances in which they murked a character and let him stay dead. Right? Um,
Mostly.
so every couple of years, there's some attempt to like bring back Captain Marvel without bringing back Captain Marvel.
Yes.
Right? So having Miss Marvel take on the Captain Marvel moniker is part of that, right? But real talk, all the that's really what's happening here. And so what it is you basically have a Marvel Comics universe that is just filled with Captain Marvel clones. And I feel like that's what we're really looking at here, right? We're just kind of bringing them all in. I but the different but what's different about doing this like in the context of a clone saga, right? Is that I feel like the problem with a clone saga, the problem with having a whole bunch of a character's clones show up is you have a lot of characters that all the clones that show up, none of them have earned their existence. Like there's no reason for you to really care about them. And with all of these, I'll call them echoes. With all these echoes of Captain Marvel, I feel like if you've been reading comics for a while, like every couple of years, you kind of start to attach yourself to one of the echoes, right? So I thought that was what was interesting about this was seeing what is essentially a structured like a clone like a clone saga, right? These are all versions of the same character, but they're versions that have earned they're versions that have to some degree earned their existence, and that actually makes me care a little bit about it and makes me a little interested in seeing what I'm seeing. I'm also kind of intrigued by how they're trying to bring back binary and do it in a way that works, because that was all I always thought binary was a problematic character. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued enough that I'm willing to sit through this and try and sort it out, and then see what happens next issue. But if you don't bring it next issue, I'm never coming back.
All right. Well, first, you're kind of making that scratchy noise, so please be careful of that because that's coming through
Okay.
and stuff. But second, I would say there's a distinction between these, as you say, Captains Marvel. But as we say here, it's played without a difference. Genus Vel and Phyla Vel are very specific characters that have had very specific experiences. Novar is not even from this dimension. He's a completely other dude. Kamala Khan is a completely drastically different person with a very sideways Kree legacy in this regard in terms of the Terrigen Mist that created her as an inhuman. Monica Rambeau, just like the name. War Machine, I'm not even sure what he's doing here. He doesn't even fit. But these are all characters that on their own are not really duplicates or echoes, as you say, of Marvel, the first Captain Marvel. But here they've been all made to play that role. In the same way
Right.
that some writers will say, I don't really care who the character is, just give me a character and I'll make it fit this thing. That's kind of what happened here, and I think that's a mistake, as you say. The distinctions are made to not have a difference. That it doesn't even matter that War Machine was never even a Captain Marvel. Let's slap him in the same thing. Which brings me to the problem with the antagonist. The antagonist is never named, let me correct this, named Vox something or other. But there's no real clear understanding of why is this antagonist doing this specific thing now to these specific characters. What's the value? What's the end game? Where's it going? What are his motivations? We have no idea. And none of those things are explicitly said or even implicitly implied in any way that is of any entertainment value, I believe. So that's two major walking in the door structural problems. That does, as you say, go against the fact that this is a beautiful book. Monica Rambeau looks amazing. Kamala Khan is holding it down. I'm happy to see Genus and Phyla Vel. I love Novar. I love him. He's amazing. But all of these characters are doing better things in other books. You can get much better Novar and Phyla Vel over in Guardians of the Galaxy. You can get much better Kamala Khan virtually anywhere. And you can definitely do better with War Machine. So I'm not really sure why this crossover, as it were, was brought to bear if nobody gets to be who they really are. and that's for me a meh-worthy distinction. It's not so bad that I'm like, ugh, I don't like this book. It's so uninteresting that I'm like, I don't care about this book.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I mean, like I said, I'm willing to to see what happens next. But yeah, I'm like you. Like they haven't sold me on the book yet. They've just sold me on the idea of the book.
Yeah.
So I do want. So I want to see what happens next.
In the words of Scrooge McDuck, I'm keeping my money.
Speaking of next, Elektra, Black, White, and Blood.
Ooh, a nice little anthology.
Yeah.
Stylized.
Yep.
Okay. There's nothing here that changes anything that anybody knows about Elektra that's worth remembering. There's nothing here that's so strong a point that it by itself is worth the purchase price. Each of these 3 stories or so they're good, but they're not great. They're side orders. It's a plate of side orders to me.
My issue with the stories is like the first story is clearly not even in continuity, because if that first story ever happened, then there's no Elektra.
Yeah.
Right. And I felt so, and that's what I felt was kind of weird about it, was they weren't even trying to like connect these stories to the Elektra in the comics.
No.
And I guess that's great because it gives the writers a chance to kind of do whatever they want, but an anthology where it's an anthology about a character, but it's not really connected to the character. Nah, next. It just didn't work for me.
That'll be a meh for me as well.
What about Thor 20?
Thor 20, the old classic father and son argument when the father's too old to be in leadership anymore. When I got to the end of this, I legitimately just sighed really loudly because they've been playing this specific concept. I don't know if we want to spoil it or not, but they've been playing this specific concept up for a few months, maybe a couple years, and I'm not with it. I don't appreciate the idea of it. It takes something away from the character and places it within essentially a vessel that's unworthy, if you pardon the phrase.
See, I'm being generous when I say this was 2 pages of story spread out over 22. I'm not even.
Yeah.
You could have told the story in less than 2 pages.
Yeah,
the only
totally.
reason I wouldn't tell this, the only reason I would stretch the story out to 2 pages is that the 2 things it's trying to do are so different that it doesn't make sense to put them on the same page.
Exactly.
But they could in theory fit on the same page with extra room. One is Thor's mad at his dad and decides that he's going to solve his problem with being upset with his dad by punching him in the face. Okay. I'm trying to figure out what we're learning from that.
While the universe burns.
Yes. I mean, so essentially what we've got our ode to violence against parents, so parental abuse, and then the other thing is kind of a like, ooh, I guess this could be the problem, and I'm not sure if I care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's unfortunate is I've enjoyed this storyline so far. But this one, it's like they took a hard turn in a direction that was not interesting to me at all.
Because I have not really enjoyed the storyline. The self-doubt of the God King Thor is not really somewhere I want to go. I didn't like the self-doubt of King Conan. I don't like, it's like you are thousands of years old. You've got all this experience. You've traveled all over the universe. You've done all kinds of things. Step up. Do something. Astonish me. And it's not happening here. And for me, I'm like, okay, I guess, whatever. Because we now know, based on canon, Thor is the last king of Asgard. There is no Asgard after him. And, okay, I guess, whatever. He's got thousands of years to rule that way, and he's going to get old, grizzly, and cranky and whatever, and have 3 wild granddaughters or whatever who are going to try to, pick up the legacy, but not really. And... okay, you're locked into this specific story motif now, but Make it interesting, because right now Thor yelling at Odin over stuff that he really should have gotten therapy over thousands of years ago is not what I want, especially when your main job, which is protecting the realms, is being undone by literally your own problem.
Right.
When something becomes, it's like when they got 7,200 Green Lantern rings. Everything became a Green Lantern problem. It became a ring-related problem where they didn't just go out and fight, oh, there's oppression or pirates. Nope, everything's a Green Lantern problem. This is the same way, and it doesn't have to be. There's more stories to tell than this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm assuming, I'm not going to speak for you, but I know for me this issue was a meh.
Hard meh, absolutely.
What about Shang-Chi #7?
I wanted to like this book. I wanted to be a lot happier with this book than I was. But Shang-Chi essentially is a reactionary in his own life, despite the fact that he's taken over the leadership of the Five Weapons Society from his father. 5 weapons, 10 rings, whatever, however you want to call it. But what's happening here, there's actually a very intense family drama happening here that we're not seeing. Shang-Chi has been reunited with his mother, who was lost in another dimension for decades, and we're not getting most of that drama. We're not getting it. We're not getting her adjustment to real life. It's not, the things that are on the page are like, oh, check out this super interesting thing that we're not going to talk about at all. What? No, give me that. Give it to me. No, what are you doing? And this slow and subtle kind of casting Shang-Chi in the role of a reluctant villain at best and a dupe at worst, I think does disservice to him as a character.
Well, I felt like this issue was also about trying to bring the comic in line with the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the core of it is him sitting down eating with his mom, and his mom talking about how she met his dad, and it's
And Talo.
basically, yeah, it's basically it's basically just they took the elements from the movie that they could and shoehorned it into this, and I feel like that I feel like I'm dealing with the same thing here that I'm dealing with in some of the other books, where this was the book where they tried to do something that I didn't really care about in
Yeah.
a story that is otherwise in a storyline that's otherwise incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
It's a lot like it's like a lot like the Black Widow book, where it's like, okay, it's kind of interesting that she had that fight, but then when you step back from it, you're like, a whole bunch of empty calories here. And I
Yeah.
felt like that with this too. Like even her story about meeting Shang-Chi's dad, it didn't warrant that much space.
Nope. And it didn't evoke that much emotion. Because I
Right.
love the movie. And the scene where they have this first fight and they're essentially flirting with each other through the fight is amazing. But
Yeah.
none of that emotion came through. There was nothing here that would show me why this woman would abandon her heritage, abandon her people for this guy who also, turned out to be a psychopath. There was no clarity for me there on why that happened. Whereas in the movie, I completely 1,000% believe it.
Yep. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to give everything a Met this week,
I might have to.
but yeah, this is not helping. I gotta give this. I'll give this a high Met. You know, buy it, read it if you want to complete the storyline, but you don't really even need this to move to the next issue.
We have Wikipedia for that.
Yep. All right. Now we got to go over to the other Marvel universe, the X universe.
Sad but
Let's
true.
start with Inferno #4.
Inferno #4, where, let me check my notes here, nothing really happened. Am I reading that right? Am I missing anything?
Well, something kind of happened, and then they used their magic to erase it all.
So nothing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just checking my notes here.
Nothing to see here.
But pay $4 for it.
Yep.
That doesn't seem right.
Well, wait. We did get to see Moira walk around with a missing arm.
I did. I didn't want that. I was looking for that. That's not what I need.
And now we kind of understand why Moira has always been just so like quixotic in all of her appearances, and why she would go from loving mutants to wanting to like eliminate all their powers, but not really at the same time. It's like I feel like that's what they were trying to do, but they didn't quite succeed.
Nah.
I feel like I feel like Inferno was a book with all sorts of intentions, and they went nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had dates like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll give that a meh.
Hardest of it. Yep.
Okay, and X-Men number 6.
Captain
Now we're
Krakoa.
on to the mystery of Captain Krakoa.
Mystery. Captain Krakoa. It's Cyclops.
They have been pushing this mystery for like months now, right? And
It feels
not
like
only do
it.
they give us Captain Krakoa, but they give us his identity within a couple of pages.
Yep.
I don't get it.
I don't want it. I'm going to keep it 1,000. Because if the whole scam is, okay, we can't let the world know that we can't die. We can't let the world know about mutant resurrection because, oh boy, will that cause some shenanigans. Then maybe don't do a public team of people who try to kill all the time in the middle of New York. Maybe a more clandestine approach. Maybe your core issue here, your core concept here, has so many flaws that you should take it back to the drawing board. That's just me as a project manager.
Well, I was also thinking that that one of the things that cracks me up about team books, right, is if you have a super team of characters and they all have different powers, why do they wear different outfits? Why not make them look exactly alike so that when they're going up against someone, they have no idea how to fight them?
That's solid.
You walk up to someone and you're like, I don't know whether you are Cyclops, Storm, or Wolverine. Like,
Well, height would tell you that.
well, probably. But my point is
I
that
think one of them's black.
put them in a full put them each in a bubble, right?
I got it.
All
You
you
wanna
see
go
is the bubble.
Breaking Bad hazmat suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you get my point. My point is you're right. If the problem is that the mutants are resurrecting, then why don't you make it so that it's less obvious which one died?
Because licensing will never let you do that.
I know that. I know that. I mean, it is kind of it does open this door to, well, whenever you die, maybe you just need to come up with a new name and a new costume.
So it's Dungeons and Dragons. You roll up a new character, it just
I mean, but that's the thing. What it is that this character that was designed to solve the problem has actually done the opposite.
Well, and also the
He's
core
made
of the,
it's like shined a light on the problem and not solved it at the same time.
well, luckily for him, comics are in this way a little dumb here, because the core of the problem was Ben Urich, who was digging into this. But Ben Urich, you don't remember nothing about nothing. We got an island full of telepaths. We'll wipe your brain. Oh wait, that's wrong. Oh wait, we're gonna do it anyway. Oh, but wait, what?
Well, and that's the other thing, right? The X-Men aren't superheroes anymore.
They're the worst.
I mean, this is just Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Or if you want to really stick with the resurrection and call back Echo to what we discussed before, it's Game of Clones.
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a meh for me.
Yep. We're spending the week on Meh Mountain.
Yeah. Well, let's go over to independent. There are 3 independent books that I read. Let's do kind of a lightning round.
All right.
Let's start with Buckhead. I read number 1 and 2 this week.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I thought Buckhead #1 was very clever. I didn't read it the week it came out. I found the book, the PDF weeks later, the review copy. I'm like, oh, what's that? Oh, I wanted to read this. And I read it. I was like, ooh, this is actually interesting because it's a very diasporic take on science fiction that's different and has some interesting new ideas. I feel the second issue wasn't as strong as the first. The second issue didn't connect the dots as well. It would deeply benefit from a recap page, but excuse me, I believe most books would. But I'm enjoying the vibe here. I'm enjoying this kind of YA approach to this science fiction thing, and I'm interested in this central character as he struggles, kind of like the kid Payne, who plays Payne on Cobra Kai, in this new environment, in wrestling with how he's going to adapt to what's happening to him. I'm enjoying watching that.
I have to say this book felt different, right? And I have to give I'll have to give it props for that. It hasn't quite pulled me in yet. I don't feel like the pieces have quite are I don't feel like the pieces are better than the sum of their parts quite yet.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like it's getting there. And I'm willing to say this. My review is hampered by the fact that I don't think this was really written for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, this is definitely something that when I think I would have loved this book a lot more if I was like in junior high.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so if you are in the audience for this, this is a definite buy.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is great. Like, I would recommend this to, like, what could I get my kid? Oh, yeah, get your
Right.
kid this. Go Buckhead. Yeah.
This makes me think comics. I mean, it in some ways it reminds me that there was a time when comics were for kids.
Yeah. I just had a whole bunch of My Little Pony comics that my daughter was now at 12 uninterested in. So I remember some of that myself.
So, what do you think of Apache Delivery Service #1?
Apache Delivery Service #1 is the best book this week. That's not a great compliment given the week, but it is the best book that came out this week. For what it does as a war comic and as a straight ahead character piece, it's enormously strong. I'm not interested in war comics in particular. I'm not interested in period pieces as well. Not that way. So you're going to need to do something interesting and unusual to get my attention that way. And this doesn't necessarily do it, especially when it invokes one of 3 or 4 words that automatically makes my brain tune out and lose complete interest, which is Nazi. The second you say that word, I'm like, ugh. But I mean, this is a well done book. It's well crafted, and I like I said, it's definitely the best book that came out this week.
I gotta say, I feel the same way. I feel like it was one thing I thought was really good. It's a very moody book, right? And it was nice to see. But I'm gonna say it was nice to see a war comic from the perspective of a Native American protagonist.
Yes.
And I'm gonna recommend this book.
I would honorable mention it. It's very. I would recommend it if you're looking for war comics, or if you're into that, or you are looking for a new perspective.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a general audience book. It's not a general recommendation that I could offer out.
Okay. So far for this week, we've got 2 qualified recommendations. One for Buckhead, one for Apache Delivery Service.
Yep.
All right, and so let's go to the final book of the week. Nita Hawes' Nightmare Blog #3.
I'm not gonna lie to you, because after you talked about this book before, I tried to read the earlier issues, and like my brain was like, nope. Because I've got a limited capacity for horror, and this stuff freaked me out, dude. Which, from a certain standpoint, is a very positive review.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't. This book, I can't begin to can with this. It's just too freaky, too weird, too wild, too unsettling. Which, like I said, is a kind of review in and of itself.
Well, I'm going to say, I like this book. I recommend this book. I feel like a couple of things that did really well. One thing, and I said this the last couple of times we've talked about it, this book feels like Maryland.
Right.
It really does. Having lived for several years in Baltimore, it feels like Baltimore without saying, "Oh, now we're in Baltimore." I like that. I
Yep.
like that you have a scene that you have things showing up like instead of focusing on Baltimore, it's like, "Oh yeah, now we're in Annapolis." Yes, when you're in Baltimore, yeah, there is Annapolis. Like like there's ways in which it's like with every city. There's ways in which you deal with the city typically, and there's ways in which you really deal with the place. And I feel like I feel like they're doing a good job of that with this one.
Yeah.
I would like a little more explanation around the demons and how they work. And I think and this is one of the problems that I have with most stuff having to do with magic, right? Even though magic and science fiction are hard to distinguish, for me, the reason why science fiction works is there are at least a sense of proportional rules,
Yes.
right? Whereas in magic, there's no rules, so anything can literally happen if the writer feels like it, and that like short circuits my ability to suspend disbelief.
Yeah. That's why I like Dungeons and Dragons, because magic has specific rules. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's the one concern I have about this book going forward, is there's not a lot of explanation as to what the rules of the world are. I mean, in this one now all of a sudden Anansi's shown up, right? I'm
Because
like,
why not?
yeah. And I'm like, okay, so what are the rules? What does this mean? And I don't know. So I recommend this book. But I identify that as a potential problem, that if he's not able to give us a sense of the rules of this world in the next 2 or 3 issues, I think it's going to become hard to read. Because now we've got demons just walking into spaces, murking people left and right, and I don't know why, and I don't know how.
Well, I would recommend it if you want to be freaked out, if you want to be uncomfortable. But I don't, so it was hard for me. But yeah, that's another qualified recommendation in my regard.
So you're saying that this book hurt your feelings?
No, I'm saying this book stalked my feelings and frightened them after school.
Well, okay. So the challenge next month is, when you read this one, is to read it at night, right before you go to bed.
Hardest pass. I did that when I read Pet Sematary in high school. That was a graphic mistake, and it's the only time I had to get up and go into sleep with my mother. I was a teenager. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Shut up. Sleep with you. Shut up."
Oh wow. Well, I guess that's the end of our that's the end of the list. I don't know how to riff on that one.
Yeah, it's pretty hard out here in these tweets. I ain't gonna lie to you. So thank you for listening or watching, if you're on YouTube, to Comic Books This Week. Please join the It's Complicated Club above our head for information. I have turned replays on, so if you want to save this, you're welcome to. And matter of fact, I'm going to actually save this replay for myself, because that may save me some drama later. And Stanford and I will be back next week. We appreciate your time. We hope you're being safe. We hope you're getting vaccinated. And we'll be talking to you.
Have a good one.
See ya.